Week 2 of semifinals. Let's get right into it. We are going to start with North America West, and I guess that's the bigger of the two semifinals, but Oceania is a pretty big semifinal as well, has a lot of big names, a lot of names that I think are pretty relevant right now in the CrossFit space, but I think on a technicality, with more athletes going to the games, with this being the semifinal that CrossFit is actually putting on and broadcasting, this is what we're gonna call the bigger of the two. That would be North America West. Torian Pro, we will get to, so hold on tight, we will get there. North America West is where we're gonna get started, and we are gonna start with the women. And the women's field in North America West is interesting. So North America West, we get 8 women going to the CrossFit Games from this region. Last week, Europe was our big region. 10 women went from Europe, and that was down a spot from last year. This year in North America West, they are getting 8 women. And looking at this field, I have so many questions as to what's going to actually happen. And I feel like I could have put a number of women on this list that I didn't. There are 2 women, I would say, that are just a tier above the rest of the field. Those 2 women, I feel very confident that they're gonna make it out of this field to the CrossFit Games. Everyone else? I don't know. I don't know. I'm gonna give you my best educated predictions, but this is a field where there are just so many women that could be in this list versus some of the other fields where there were just women that were so obviously well above. And like last week, we had Gabby Magala, Laura Horvath, Karen Friova, I would say Emma Tall. There were quite a few women on that list that just felt like those other women were not quite as much as Gabby and Laura. They were really, really in their own league, even more so than anyone at North America West. But there were a couple women that just felt like they sort of differentiated themselves. And the women's field in Europe, the 10 that ended up going were pretty far ahead of the cut line anyway. So it really was those 10 that seemed like they were the fittest by far. There wasn't like a tight cut line. Here, I think we're gonna see a tight cut line in North America West. So now that I've talked about that for so long, let's actually talk about my list. So I mentioned 2 women that I felt are just a head above everyone else. And those 2 women would be Alex Kazan and Ariel Lowen, who both were top athletes at the CrossFit Games last year. Ariel Lowen even standing on the podium. But I actually have Alex Kazan as my winner for the North America West semifinal. I have Ariel Lowen coming in second. I do feel that these 2 women are going to be safely near the top of the leaderboard, or I'm gonna say at the top of the leaderboard, just up there, holding down that 1 and 2. I just feel that they're just in a different league. But then the rest of the women, there's like 15 that I feel like could possibly sneak into this top 8 that go on to the games. So this is where things get interesting. So in third, I have Emily Rolfe. And I do feel pretty strongly that Emily Rolfe has a good chance of making it to the CrossFit Games. She's been there quite a few times. She's very consistent. She's looked good in the off season. I feel good about Emily. So I will say that I like her to round out the podium. And if not round off the podium, I feel that she's going to be in this field pretty safely in that top 8. Moving on, Olivia Kerstetter. I have her next. She is very impressive. She did have some holes last year. How much she has shored those up this year, I do still have some questions there. I know that she's training hard. I know that she's super young. So she is still making big jumps because her body isn't even fully developed yet. But Olivia is just built like a bigger, stronger athlete. And I don't think she's ever going to be the fastest, the most gymnasty. I just don't think it would be a lot for her body to become that. Anything is possible. She is so young. I am willing to be surprised, but I do think that she is going to still have some holes that make her a little bit less likely to be a sure thing compared to some other athletes. Next, I have Bethany Flores, who made it to the games last year, and I feel like sort of surprised people. She had that back injury. She came to semifinals unsure if she would make it to the games, taking everything event by event. Ended up going to the games, doing all right. I don't feel that Bethany will ever be the Bethany we thought she could have been that year that she got COVID. I just don't know if with the injuries that she's mitigating now, that if she has that capacity, it would be interesting to see. She definitely did at one time. So if she can get that injury under control, she could be a real threat one day to like win her semifinal, like she did that year, winning the West Coast Classic. Actually, it was in Vegas that year, but winning it and looking fantastic doing it. I'm just not sure if she's back to that place that she was in, and I just don't know if she'll get there. She's just an athlete that's getting closer to that master's range, still a few years away, but it's not like she's a 18-year-old like Olivia Kerstetter, who we just talked about, who would have a lot of time to recover and bounce back. We'll see. I do think she'll make it to the games though. So next I have Dani Speegle, and the bottom of my list has shifted a tiny bit after watching the European semifinal. I feel like watching that semifinal shifted my perspective on who these workouts favor. I feel like some of the workouts that I thought were gonna favor or maybe be more of an even test between the smaller and the bigger athletes moved a little bit more towards the bigger athletes. I was thinking that legless rope climb workout with the bike and the box jump was going to be a little bit more even on the legless portion of it, maybe favoring some different athletes, maybe some small gymnasty athletes being able to get up that rope fast. But with the bike, with the box jump, the higher box, I do feel like it favored a little bit of a bigger athlete if they had the jump and pulling power to get up that rope. They definitely also had the advantage on that bike and the advantage on the box jumps just being taller to get on them quicker. So I think that workout may favor the bigger athlete a little bit more than I thought it was going to. And then the final workout with the muscle ups, 15 muscle ups, I feel like the bigger crux of that workout was definitely the walking lunges with those heavy dumbbells. And on the women's side, we did see some women struggle a bit with those dumbbells. So I'm thinking that's where you're actually going to be losing more time. And we saw some men struggle with them as well, have to go back, fall out of their lane a little bit. So if that's the case, you may have some of these bigger women. I think most people went unbroken on the muscle ups last week, but you might be able to have some of these women take a quick break on the muscle ups if they can just motor through those walking lunges like they have no dumbbells, which I think some of these women, a Dani Speegle, could do. She's also good on the rings, or pretty good on the rings, and at gymnastics movements. So I think that workout will be very good for her. And it's really gonna, but the bigger thing it's gonna come down to is those walking lunges, not so much the ring muscle ups, but she's pretty gymnasty. Moving on, I have Kelsey Keel in my 7th place position. I think that, like I mentioned, some of these workouts would be better for like a bigger athlete. I know that she'll do well on the bike. We'll see how she does in those legless rope climbs, but she's tall, so maybe she can get a good jump onto that. And then she's tall for the box jump over, so already just being taller, easier to get up onto that box. That workout will favor her. The snatch workout, I think she'll do very well at. And again, I think she's gonna be able to like beast those dumbbell walking lunges. I know she's been working on her muscle ups. I think that she has a chance to qualify out of this field. And I think that after what happened to her in quarterfinals, almost having her season come to an end, she could be just hungrier than ever. And then finally, I have Kyra Milligan in the last position to make it. Kyra went team last year. She had done some individual semifinals before, or competitions as well. She went to Rogue. She qualified in the online qualifier to go to Rogue, which is a very difficult thing to do. She competed against all of those very competitive games athletes at Rogue. And I think that she, in this field, has a shot of getting above that cut line and making it into the games field. I also think having games experience now, having went to the games on a team with Mayhem, I think all of that is going to help her just have the confidence going in to be able to compete with a lot of these women who have been to the games and do well in some of these workouts. I think some of these workouts would be good workouts for her as well. So I think she's definitely someone who has a chance of making it into this top 8 that go to the CrossFit Games, and she is my final athlete that I'm putting in that top 8. But my athletes to watch, I really feel like any of these athletes could be in this 8. All 4 of them could be in this 8. And other than like Alex Kazan, Ariel Lowen, and maybe Emily Rolfe, I feel like anyone else really could be shifted off depending on what happens this weekend, because this field's just so stacked with women who could go to the games, if that makes sense. There's other fields, there's like women that I feel like could do very well at the games, are competing to win the games, are competing for podium positions. Here, you have Alex Kazan, Ariel Lowen, who could do very well at the games, could be on the podium again at the games. And then everyone else just feels a little bit more middle of the pack games athletes, or lower end of the pack. But there's a lot of people that could be in that list of people who could be like 15th through 40th at the games. It's an interesting semifinal for the women. So, women to watch. I have on the top of my list Devin Kim, and I think she is a very good athlete, has competed on a team, won the games as a team athlete. She's competed as a teen athlete too, like a teenager. She's been doing this for a very long time, super fit. The biggest reason I have her on my athletes to watch and not in the field of athletes to make it to the games is I'm a little bit confused about this injury that she may or may not have. She was supposed to be on the Invictus team that's trying to make their way back to the games and win the games again. But because of her back injury, she was taken off of the team and replaced by Jessie Smith, who I think is another fantastic athlete. But if she was too injured to be a team athlete, she's not too injured to be an individual? I just think you would be injured to be both. But maybe she doesn't want to let down her team in case her back flares up. I don't know. But because that's putting a bunch of question marks in my head, I just can't put her in the fields of 8 athletes making it to the games when there's just so many athletes I feel like could be in that top 8. So I have her to watch. I think if she was healthy, she could easily be in the top 8 of the field. And she could be healthy. I'm confused about that one. So I just put her to watch, because if she's injured, obviously that's not great. So moving on to my next person, Rebecca Fuselier. And I would love to see her go back to the games. I think she has a great story. She was also a teen athlete. She's a smaller athlete, has to really work at that strength part of it to make it. She does well in the Open. She does well in quarterfinals, but as things get a little bit more heavy and weighted towards some of the bigger athletes, or more even towards the bigger athletes, I think she's going to struggle a little bit more, especially seeing how some of these workouts that I thought would be a little bit more evenly split between the big and the smaller athletes are favoring the bigger athletes. Like that muscle up workout, I feel like it actually favors a bigger athlete, because that walking lunge is really the crux of the workout. I just don't know if it's going to line up for her, but it would be awesome to see her back at the games, and she definitely has a shot. We'll see. Abigail Domit, she made it into the field last year. She is also a taller athlete, and it felt like last year's semifinals workouts really favored bigger athletes with so many machines. I think that could have been partially the reason she was able to jump into the field of games athletes, but I don't know if that's going to be the case this year. So I have her to watch, potentially make it back, but certainly not a shoo-in. And then finally, Sydney Mikulishin. She's been to the games, was under comp trained for a long time, has switched to proven. I just don't know if that's gonna be enough to get her back to the games. Last year, I believe I did predict her to make it to the games out of the semifinals, and she did not. So this year, I am putting her kind of how she did last year, of not making it. But again, another athlete that I think has the capacity. We'll just have to see how she performs this weekend. Okay, let's move over to the men. And I feel like we have some really, really great men in this field. I feel like we have more men that could possibly be very, very competitive top 10 games athletes versus the women in this field. And that's probably why the men have 9 spots going to the CrossFit Games and the women only have 8. So, 9 men. Let's talk about these 9 men. The first man I have on my list and my first place winner is Patrick Vellner. He is going to be starting out a little bit lower down the leaderboard than he anticipated. He was hit by one of those event 1 quarterfinals workout penalties, but none of that matters now. He's generally a good mover. I think he'll be fine in the semifinals. I think he could definitely win it, and I think he's sort of the man to watch at this semifinal, and he's gonna be a man to watch at the games too, I think. So Pat Vellner, I have winning the whole thing. In second, I have Brent Fikowski, and some other people have him down farther, and I get that thought process. He's in his early 30s now. He is weirdly sized, but Jelle Hoste did great at the Europe semifinals, built very, very similar to Brent. Brent is also super analytical, and we got these workouts a little bit earlier than we thought we were going to because they were leaked. And I think Brent is good at preparing. He had plenty of time to prepare for this. So I think that I have him second. I think he's on the podium at the semifinal. In third, I have a past games winner, and that is Justin Medeiros. I feel like there could be an argument for him being hungry to get back and win the games and possibly win this semifinal. But while I do think he's hungry to win the games, I think a lot of people who want to win the games realize winning the semifinals is not a necessary step in that. Laura Horvath won the games last year. She didn't win her semifinal. She came in second. She came in first at the games where it mattered most and where people are going to remember it the most. So I imagine Justin is not peaking for this in the same way he'll peak for the games. So I have him on the podium, but I have him in third. We'll see. And he didn't do great at semifinals last year. Next, I have Samuel Quant. He is an interesting athlete, can sometimes hit or miss, but overall, I think he usually does what he needs to do. So I think he's gonna do what he needs to do here, and I think that he can really do well at a few of these workouts. So I have him on the top half of this list. Next, I have Brandon Luckett. He came in second in quarterfinals after the penalties and has a bunch of games experience. I think in this field, he has the experience, he has the skill, that he will make it to the games. Next, I have James Sprague. I think he will be going back for his second year at the CrossFit Games. I don't really have a lot of questions there. I think that he is good enough among this field to make it back. Cole Grayshaber, a fairly consistent athlete, so consistent that he's been 33rd at the games 2 years in a row, and I think he'll make it back, and maybe he'll get that 32nd this time if he does. Next, I have William Leahy. He's an athlete that's been sort of knocking on the door. He's been close. He's really been focusing on trying to do what he can to get to the games. A lot of discussion around him and his fitness. I think that he has enough to make it in this field, and I think he's gonna make his rookie appearance at the CrossFit Games. And finally, to wrap up this list, after a rookie, we have one of the least rookie athletes in the entire field, and that would be Cole Sager. He will be trying to go for his 11th CrossFit Games qualification. He would tie BKG for the athlete to qualify for the most consecutive games. Ben Smith also went to 11 games, but he was invited to his final one. If Cole Sager does this, he will he will punch his own ticket, just like BKG did. And Cole Sager has a tendency to know how to do just enough, just get there. And if it comes down to a last event Hail Mary, Cole Sager is the one who can do it. Out of all the athletes, he's one of the ones I believe in the most. So I gotta go with history. So Cole Sager is my final athlete into the field. Some athletes to watch, and I was disappointed to put some of these on the list. But the first one I have on the list is Colton Mertens. Why I don't have him in the field. It's tricky. I feel like the CrossFit analysts of the space tend to underestimate Colton, and he has proved a lot of people wrong a lot. But watching Europe and watching how some of the smaller athletes suffered on some of these events really makes me concerned. We had someone like Uldis Upeniks, who is 5'7", I believe, is what the centimeters come out to in feet. And he won events 1 and 2 and just couldn't hang on the things like the legless rope climb and the bike workout. And that was it. And I don't imagine Colton Mertens is going to be able to hang on a biking workout that much better than Uldis was able to not do. So I have to leave him off my list. Tudor Magda, then I have Zach Bunton. He is actually someone I know and worked out with a bit when I was in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Super, super strong guy. Some of these big guy strength workouts are really going to favor him. I just don't know if some of the running workouts are gonna be things he does as well at, like that first workout. And then finally, Sam Dancer. Sam Dancer is 37 years old. And although he seems very focused on his fitness and trying to qualify as an individual again this year, I just think it's gonna be tough. So I gotta just put him on my men to watch. Would be pretty cool to see though, 37-year-olds qualify for the individual division in the CrossFit Games. Love to see it if we do. Let's move over to the teams, and I'm gonna read through these quickly because I do know that people don't like the teams. I think some of the team stuff is fun. Day one, though, of watching the teams on that stream last week was not very good. I appreciate the stream. I think that Chase does a great job with broadcasting during the stream and some of the people that they brought on to speak with him. But the giant wide shot, it just doesn't work for teams. You can't see anything. You don't know where anyone is. There's already so many people on the field. It can already sometimes be challenging to be able to keep up with where everyone is when you have multiple cameras. One giant camera, it just makes it so challenging. So I'll go through this quickly because I get it. People don't like it as much. And then you also add in the fact that it's difficult to see. Doesn't help. Okay, so we'll go through the teams. I have CrossFit Invictus, your defending champion, in first place. That was a pretty easy choice, although they do have some new athletes, but CrossFit Invictus, very consistent at the CrossFit Games, very reliable team to make their way to the CrossFit Games, and I don't think they'll just have one team, but that one will be the top one. Moving on, we'll go through these teams. Let me tell you, if there's a Rhino or an Invictus, those are names you want to look for when you're watching, if you're watching this team competition. So CrossFit Invictus was number 1, CrossFit Overtake Density, Rhino CrossFit Dogs, CrossFit Invictus Unconquerable, Rhino CrossFit Service Dogs, Verdant CrossFit, and CrossFit Invictus Unbroken are the 7 teams I have going to the CrossFit Games out of this region. It is 7 here. It's a little bit different at some of the different regions, so I just try to remind people of the numbers so you know what to look for and where that cut line is when you're watching and when you're looking at the leaderboard. All right, wrap that up. Let's head way over to Australia for the Torian Pro, the Oceania Semifinal. And this is an exciting semifinal. We have athletes here that can do some big things at the games. And we've had athletes out of Oceania do really big things. You may have heard of one of them, Tia Claire Toomey. She used to be in Oceania. She still is Australian, but she has residence in the United States, in Nashville, so she competes out of North America East. We will see her next week. She's not here. But not only her, like Cara Saunders, formerly Cara Webb, has done a whole ton out of this region. Ricky Garrard has been on the podium. There's just a lot of names in this smaller region that have done incredibly well. So it's a fun region to watch. And my guess is they'll have a better stream day one than the North America West. That's my guess. That's been the case in the past. So Torian Pro does some things pretty well. I've heard it's a really awesome event too. Would love to go there one day. Maybe someone can help me with that. Maybe, we'll see. Not this year. All right, let's go into the list. So it is 4 women, 4 men, and 3 teams. So of our 4 women, it's gonna look different this year than previous years, but also kind of the same as some really previous years. So the athlete I have winning this for the women's side is Madeline Sturt. And Madeline Sturt has been to the games several times. So Madeline Sturt is 27, but the first time she competed at the games was 8 years ago in 2016, and she went 4 times to the games, 2016, 17, 18, 19. And the past couple of years just hasn't been able to get back. And this year, this is her year not just to get back, but I think to win the Torian Pro. So if we look at how she did in quarterfinals, she had 2 first place finishes, a 2nd and an 8th. And just doing everything to show that she deserves to win this region. So she was first at a quarterfinals, did well in the open. I believe she is with Proven now. I think that she's gonna do really well here. I think it's hers to lose, and I don't think she's going to lose it. She's been very close to making it back to the games several years in a row. I'm glad she didn't let that disappointment break her, and I think this is her year to come back and win it, because there are some people missing in this field, like Ellie Turner. So I think this is her year to come back and take it all. So going down the list in second, I have Caitlin Van Ziel, and she was 1 spot out from making it to the games last year. She had some trouble through quarterfinals, but she is here, she is on the list, and I think she'll be coming to the States for the games. Grace Walton I have after that. And finally, I have Georgia Pryor. She's improved at semis the last 2 years. Young athlete. I think she's going to continue to improve and make it to the games now that there are 4 spots here and there's a little bit more opportunity. Athletes to watch. I have Julia Hannaford and Gemma Hack. They both did well in quarterfinals, and I think that they have the opportunity, if things line up, to make it into that top 4. But I do feel like there is a separation point here, especially between those top 2 and the rest of the field. So just something to keep in mind. In the men's side, I think it's gonna be a battle for that first place position. We have Ricky Garrard, who has been fantastic in the past. We've seen him on the podium at the games, won semifinals before. Yeah, you gotta lean towards Ricky. But in quarterfinals, he was tied with Jay Crouch. And Jay Crouch just keeps looking better every single year. He is also with Proven. I think Maddie Sturt, his girlfriend, is going to make it. I think all the success is gonna breed more success. And I think Ricky does have to look out for Jay. I think Jay may be coming up behind him and could possibly steal this away. I think those 2 will be battling it out for the top of that podium. Next, I have Bailey Martin, been to the games. Think he's gonna do pretty well. I think these 3 guys on the top, Ricky, Jay, and Bailey, I think they're a little bit ahead of the rest of the field. In 4th, I went with Ben Fowler. He's been to the games on a team. He's young, he's improving, has some experience at semis and at the games. I think that all helps with the confidence. I think we can see him heading to the CrossFit Games. But guys to watch, I have Zach Thomas, Luke DeJong, and Peter Ellis. All did really well in quarters. All are within striking distance of that final position. But like I said, I feel like those 3, barring any hiccups or any Ioannikowski-like shocking surprises, I think those 3 are going to be a little bit ahead of the field. Certainly those 2. Ricky and Jay, I feel like they're just on a different level. I feel like Bailey kind of middles, and then you have the rest of the field. Teams, again, I know, we're just gonna do the 3 teams that I think are gonna make it. But I think the teams here are interesting. We've got some names on these teams. That should make you all excited. Names that have been individuals, names that you're familiar with, names that can contend at the CrossFit Games for podium positions. Let's talk about them. So, for the 3 teams, the first one I have is one that has a name that's too long. I've decided, too long. It's just hard to say, guys. When you make the names more than like 3 words, it's too many words. Definitely 4 is like the max. And this one has 5. So Raw Iron CrossFit Mayhem Thunder. Too long. That's too long. Anyway, though, the people on this team are people you should know. All have had individual appearances at the games. That would be James Newberry, Emily DeRue, Cara Saunders, and Con Porter. All major names teaming up. And when you see major names like that teaming up, they're going there to take names. They want to win. That's why they're with these other big names. People that have experience, people that know how to do well at the games. So I have them in first. Second, I have CrossFit Torian Mayhem. We've got 2 Mayhems teams here. Mayhem's also a name that next week I'm sure we will talk more about. But this week, we got some of them here too. So CrossFit Torian Mayhem, their captain is Royce Dunn. He has 5 games appearances, some as an individual, some on a team, just a ton of experience there. That's the kind of person you want a captain of your team. That's the kind of person that helps carry a team and gives them the confidence to make it back to the games. So we're gonna think that Royce is going to be able to repeat the success he's had in the past. And then in third, I have CrossFit All-Side 64 Army. Again, another name that just feels too long, because it's just hard to say. I don't know a whole ton about them, but what I do know is they won quarterfinals. They beat both the other teams that I mentioned in quarterfinals. Now, winning quarterfinals versus winning at semifinals, very different, but it means they do have some talent on this team. They are pretty fit, and I think it's fair to look at them to possibly be a team to punch their ticket to the CrossFit Games. That wraps all of this up. If you are new here and you've enjoyed all of this, make sure you subscribe, like this video. If you think my picks are trash, let me know below. If you like some of them, you let me know about that too. Oh, and if you've noticed, like I have all of this cupping. I went to a chiropractor that does like a bunch of like soft tissue body work too, and she just wrecked me. Do you see that? Is that noticeable? Do you think anyone would notice that? Let's see, what does this side look like? It looks worse, right? That's not cupping, that was blading. I didn't even go in hurting, but I may have left hurting. And let me get Carson for those of you who really just watch for him. This is the Easter egg at the end of the video. If you stayed till the end, you get a glimpse at my Carson. And you know where semifinals is happening this week? In Carson. Yeah, your city. You own that city? He's actually the mayor of Carson. He should be. There are some towns that do have dogs for mayors, and I love it every time I hear about it. It's so fun. But I imagine they're not great policymakers. But maybe they're not that bad. Some humans aren't great policymakers either, you know? And dogs are just the best. Dogs are the best. Okay, bye. Bye, I'll see you in the next one. Should we switch or should Carson just tell you about the semifinals this time? Oh, nope, he's gonna fall asleep. Bye, buddy.